Welcome to Mojo Motivation and Mental Health, where we have conversations that change lives. I'm Mike Orlowski. Before we start today, if you are an athlete or executive struggling with pressure, performance anxiety, or thoughts of suicide, please reach out to the 988 Suicide and Crisis Hotline. Call 911 for an emergency. You're not alone. Being an athlete doesn't mean you have to tough it out alone, and you matter. If this show does help you and these conversations are making a difference in your life, or maybe they'll help someone else, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support really does help us reach people who need to hear it. Now, today's conversation is what happens inside the mind of an athlete, the pressures we don't see from the stands, the mental health crisis that's hitting sports at every level, and why being tough on the field doesn't mean you have to suffer in silence. My guest is Dr. Sam Maniar, a sports and performance psychologist who works with everyone from NFL team to high school athletes and to corporate executives. About 60% of Sam's practice is athletes. The other 40% is corporate executives. And here's what's interesting. Uses that revenue from corporate workshops to fund his real passion, helping athletes who are dealing with the pressures most people never see. Because here's what's happening in sports right now. NIL deals are creating financial pressures on college athletes who are barely adults. Social media abuse is targeting players after every loss. Coaching styles can make or break mental health. And though the tough it out culture that I grew up with, still out there, and it keeps athletes from asking for help until it's too late. Sam works with NFL teams, he works with universities, works with local high schools, and he's on the board of a local high school foundation working to get mental health support into the schools before athletes reach crisis. We're going to talk about what athletes are really dealing with, why motivation and mental health are inseparable, and how we break the stigma that says we're seeking help is weakness. Sam, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you being here. It's a great topic. It's one that I take personal. Both my kids played sports in high school and college. Both of them learned the level of anxiety goes up in college. The struggle is real for these athletes. So I'm glad we're having this conversation today. Now, your practice is kind of split currently 60% athletes, 40% corporate executives. Let's talk about that mix a little bit. Maybe what do athletes and executives have in common when it comes to performance and mental health?
Yeah, performance is really performance. And I learned that, when I first started my career, I was a sports psychologist at Ohio State University, and the athletic director at the time, Andy Geiger, recommended that I try to build up a practice on the side to work with executives. It was really his idea and businesses. And I said, I don't know anything about business and executives, right?
Yeah.
And I quickly learned that performance is performance. And whether you are delivering a presentation in front of a boardroom or you need to make a free throw to tie the game and go to overtime, you're under pressure and we are trying to perform at our best. And so I also find that executives really gravitate towards that sport metaphor that
Yes.
many, many people can relate. Maybe they're either a former athlete themselves or a passionate fan or both. And it's a great metaphor for life, which is why we get our kids in sports
Mm,
anyways, right? It's not about the sport.
right.
It's about all the lessons learned from sport.
Yeah, that makes sense. I still use a lot of sports metaphors too, so I understand how that works. And we've been in the sports. I mean, I played a fair amount as a kid. Both my kids played from 4 all the way till like into college, like I said. And it's kind of just in our DNA, I guess. Now, on the athlete side, mental health crisis, you're working with athletes at all levels, NFL, universities, high school, and you're seeing it at all levels. What is happening? What are athletes dealing with that maybe we don't see from the stands? As a parent, I saw some of it, but we don't see all of it because there's a lot that goes on even in the locker room.
Sure. Yeah. And I'd even throw the executives in here too. Like, for an executive, it's very lonely at the top.
Yeah.
Who do you have that you can really console, confide in? You might have a board that you report to. Well, you certainly can't tell them your struggles, right? And you don't
Right.
want to tell
Right.
your direct reports how hard it is. And, in the corporate world, you do well, and then the expectations just go up, right? The quota just went up another 10%. You get rewarded by raising the bar. That's your reward. And so you go to athletes, it's very similar. when people try to understand why the rates of mental health struggles are going higher and higher and higher, at first it doesn't make sense if you think about it, because we know the most effective treatment for depression and anxiety is exercise. More
Right.
effective than any medication. Even as a therapist, um, it can be more effective than talk therapy. And so you'd say, all right, well, the athletes are getting tons of exercise.
Right.
Why is this not helping? And it is helping. But you take the added pressures of, as you said in your introduction, access through social media, the athlete now looking at social media, not just, the negative comments, but you know, comparing themselves to all these other people that are posting. Mind you, it's only what they want you to see, but
Of
but,
course. Of
you see
course.
what's on social media, the pressures to perform are, the visibility on television. You mentioned the NIL deals. What's happened is th the expectations and pressures have risen, but we haven't taught them the coping skills to go along with what has risen, right? So, the coping skills have stayed the same, which is pretty much suck it up,
Yeah.
rub some dirt
Rub
on it.
rub
That's
some
the
dirt
coping.
on it.
But
Yep.
the pressure and expectation is, unprecedented now,
Yeah.
and so it's there's a disconnect between the what's raised in terms of pressure and expectations, and the lack of coping that's come along with it.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I hadn't really thought about it that way, right? We've maintained that level of mental health availability, conversations, access, right? It's not talked about very often at schools, especially I would expect at the high school level, maybe a little bit at the college level, more so maybe at the pro level. But then you add in the social media aspect, which has magnified things significantly. I think we've all probably participated in some way, shape, or form with our favorite teams, and we comment on a post and like, I can't believe he missed that ground ball, or I can't believe he didn't catch that pass. But obviously, there are far worse comments out there that they're just targeting people, death threats. I mean, some of the things I'm sure you've heard. It's got to have a very difficult impact because you can tell the athletes all you want to ignore comments. It's very hard to do.
No, it is. It is. It's very hard to do, and many athletes are visible in the community.
Hmm.
Even you think about a high school or college athlete, they tend, maybe in the way they're dressing or their appearance and their size or their stature, they're pretty noticeable, and people feel like they have free reign to say anything or everything to people, either in public or through the cloak of anonymity on social media.
Right, right. And people can be brutal and mean when they're hiding behind their keyboard.
Oh, 100%. I mean, look, I'm sure many of your listeners can appreciate, like, when their favorite team loses, like, you're bummed out for quite a bit, right? And
Yeah,
maybe if you're lucky, it's only for a few minutes, but for some people,
right.
like, as a Cleveland fan, I still remember, the 95, the 97, the 2016, Guardians Indians World Series,
Yeah,
the Cavs losses, the Browns, so I mean, those are big parts of our lives. In fact, there's a great ESPN 30 for 30 on kind of Believe Land and Cleveland and so forth. And so it is such a big part of our lives,
yeah.
arguably too much of our lives,
Agree,
but
right.
right, but
Guilty and agree. Yes.
right, but so people, they want to have an outlet to express their frustrations, and they take liberty with those for sure.
Oh, yes, they do. And they don't think about who's on the other end, right? Because we're all humans. We all have feelings. We all have different ways that this impacts us, and we have to take that into consideration. I mean, I wear a shirt from Till Valhalla Project that says "Be kind," and the back says, "We don't know what others are dealing with," or something along
Yes.
those lines, right? We
Yeah.
never know what others are struggling with, and it took me a long time to learn that, but it's important that we remember that, and especially in the case of high school and college athletes, these are kids, these are young adults. I mean, it's not fair what some people do to these kids, and they just don't think about the impact.
No. Well, and, talk about not fair, some of it comes from their parents
True.
on the sidelines. Maybe not I don't know that they're publicly posting on social media, but the comments I hear from their own parents in the
Yeah.
sidelines on the sidelines is just dumbfounding.
Yeah, yeah. I went through a phase with yelling at the umpires, and of course, as a coach, I always yelled at the umpires in baseball. But I was never kicked out of a game, so I'm still proud of that. I was close, but I was never kicked out of a game. And then in the last couple of years, obviously, we've had a new development, right? NILs come into play. It's kind of become a free for all, which, right, wrong, or indifferent, is coming with a lot of things these kids have to adjust to. NIL probably will adjust as well, but the impact on them financially and mentally is still there because there's a lot of, I think, increased pressure to perform. There's managing money, which in some cases for these kids is millions of dollars. That's an awful lot for an 18-year-old kid in college.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, their brains are still developing. I mean, we talk about pro athletes and it's a lot of money to give
Yeah.
them at, age 21, 22, 23, and it is. But now we're as you're saying, we're talking 18, 19-year olds um and yeah, not everybody's getting the suitcase of money, but it is getting more and more common. My daughter's going to play D1 college soccer, and the school she's going to, many of her teammates have deals with supplement companies or even the local ice cream shop, and posting and expectations, and all that's doing is making you even more visible, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, as we know, when people get money, all of a sudden people come out of the woodwork and they've got their hands out, right? And how do
Yeah.
you say
New
no to
best
these
friend.
people? How do you set boundaries?
Yeah.
This money is not going to last forever, no matter how much it is. And,
No.
and how to manage that. Not to mention, how about the taxes?
Right.
I mean, how many of these kids have ever filed taxes before? It's
Right.
comes with a lot of stress.
Yeah, they're gonna have to file taxes in the state they are from and the state that they're in college in. My son had 3 this year because he was in Ohio and Indiana, and he still resides in North Carolina for now until probably another year. So it's like, yeah, the things they don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. But on top of that, then there's the added pressures of, like you said, now they have to post on behalf of the supplement company. And they have to remember, because there's pressure associated with that to perform and for the money. It's a lot of strain. And I think schools probably need to do a better job. And you maybe speak to it of helping them from a mental health coaching perspective, right? I was going to go into this, the coaching impact, but the coaches are not psychologists. They're not counselors. We need to have an avenue, I think, to help them better prepare mentally for this.
Yeah, for sure. Regardless of what you think about NIL, I mean, some version of it is here to stay. The
Of course.
toothpaste is out of the proverbial tube now, and
Yeah.
maybe there'll be some caps or some guardrails set. I hope so,
Yeah.
but yeah, you can you can complain about the coaches, you can complain about the culture all you want, but what are we doing to support the athletes in the situation? And, my answer is not
Hmm.
enough.
No. Right.
So the pressures are going up, and what are we doing to, help them? Figuring it out on their own is not the best answer, right? And
No.
that's unfortunately the way we handle a lot of things with kids is we, throw them in the deep end and figure
Hmm.
out how to swim, right? And yeah, that
Right.
that works over time, but it's not the most efficient or effective. And what's the cost along the way? And we're seeing many student athletes commit suicide, think about suicide, the mental health rates. When you look at any survey you want, NCAA or any other SAMHSA, any other organization that kind of surveys athletes and mental health, the rates are continuing to rise, whether you look at stress or sleep or depression and anxiety. And what are we doing about it? That's the $1 million question.
So, from a coaching style, how can coaching styles impact mental health? I've seen this, I've witnessed it. I can't really speak to it. I don't really want to talk about how my kids were impacted because I don't have their permission to talk about it, but I've seen it. Coaching styles can positively impact someone's mental health, they can really negatively impact them. What's the difference between that type of coaching style, and how do we work with these coaches to maybe help improve it?
Yeah. So I think one thing to kind of understand it, to maybe empathize a little bit with the coaches is their livelihood, their jobs are tied to winning and losing,
Yes,
right?
they are.
And so they may be looking at the sport a little bit different
Hmm.
than the kids are. And I'm not talking about rec baseball here.
Sure. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
talking about, college, high level high school, definitely professional. It's a very different experience for them. And because of that, I think sometimes they take that pressure out, maybe in maybe not maybe, definitely ineffective, unhealthy ways on
Sure.
the kids. Right?
Yeah,
I also think when you're being recruited, when I think about college, you get all this love
you
from
do.
the coach, right? You
Yep.
are the greatest thing since sliced bread, and
Yeah.
you are this son to that coach, right? Not the SON, but the SUN son, and then 28, 32, whatever the roster's cap situation is,
Right.
9 players on the team. And
Yes.
that's a big drop off. Like you go from being, this great person, and that feels good. It feels good to be wanted, right? To
Yes.
now you're just one player on the roster. And so that's hard too. Um, but then, yeah, you have some old school coaches, very demanding. Ironically, those are the ones that don't really believe in mental health and psychology and
Yeah.
support. And you have, the coaches that are uber nice, but are never really honest.
Yeah.
They're afraid to be honest. And so I think it's important that gets with the right style of coach
I agree.
for what they need, and ideally, a coaching staff complements one another, right? If you've got
Right.
the really demanding tactician, okay, there's a place for that, right? As long as you complement that with somebody who's like real supportive, and when the kid gets chewed out by the head coach, the assistant coach kind of puts their arm around the kid and helps them, you know, process and reinterpret what was just said. Maybe they don't like the message. It's kind of like a peanut. You don't like the shell, you throw the shell away and you eat the nut. So forget about how it
Yeah.
was delivered. What
Yeah.
was the essence of what they were trying to tell you, right? Uh, and so there are all different types of coaching styles. I think I don't know what the right ratio is, 3, 4, 5 to 1 positive to negative. Kids will still hear the negative more than the positive, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So I think the solution is the more complementary staff.
Hmm.
I The solution is being honest with your kid about the type of coach that they will blossom under.
Hmm.
Everybody will tell you, "Oh, yeah, I wanna be held accountable, and I want demanding, and I want this," but is that really, really true?
Sure.
The coach is not going to show you who they really are in the recruiting process
No.
because they want you to come there, right?
Right. They need players.
They need players, right? And if we're talking high school, they need players, right? And or the college, they need players, and so
They need players.
pro, you don't really get the luxury of choosing. You get
Correct.
drafted to a team, and it
Here
it
you
is what it
go.
is, right?
Yeah.
But that's where I think support staff, mental health clinicians being part of that, come
Hmm.
in and play a really big role. The athletic trainer,
Yes.
the team doc, the academic advisor, the academic counselor, all of these staff members, the equipment manager, all of these staff members can play a vital role if allowed to be part of
Yes.
the team.
I can say from both kids' perspectives, between three different schools where they played at, because my son played undergrad and grad, the athletic trainer was probably the most pivotal person for both of them. Physically, of course, kind of the job, but mentally as well, because they were someone that seemed to be able to relate with them better than, say, the coach. They were someone that could understand what they were going through, right? Because a lot of times if you're injured, the coach is like, "Well, what are we gonna get you back on the field? Are you really not able to pitch today?" Whereas the trainer's like, they'll go to bat for you like, "No, he can't pitch today," or, "No, her shoulder is not right. We gotta figure out what's going on here." And they
Yes.
become a little bit of an advocate. So I think you hit the nail on the head with the trainer side of things. They were
Yeah.
huge.
Athletes spend a ton of time with the trainer, and
Yeah.
I mean, they're the front lines. And when I look at like referral data of people who come to me, the top
Mhm.
two are teammate and athletic trainer by far.
Yeah.
Teammate said, "Oh man, look, I work with Dr. Sam and he was great. And nothing like what you think. There's no couch to lay on in there or whatever." And or it's the trainer that says, "You know what? I've worked with a lot of other athletes who've gone through something similar, and they really benefited by working with Dr. Simon. I can only help you so much." And so by far, the trainers are huge. They are the eyes and ears
Yes.
for me as to what's going on. And uh, you know, when I was with the Cleveland Browns, and then when I went to the University of Akron, and he kind of brought that with me, was one thing we started with the help of trainers was anyone who was going to be out for a prolonged amount of time for an injury was required to at least have one session with me,
Okay.
because we quickly realized that sometimes in a training room, people aren't presenting as depressed, right? Because it's a
Right.
public setting. And a lot of people were struggling with their injury. And we
Mhm.
quickly found doing some research that injured athletes struggled with clinical depression at 3 times the rate of their healthy athlete peers. And
Mm.
so
Wow.
they were very much at risk, especially in that 1 month period following an injury. And so we wanted to get in, heard too many horror stories of I went home and drank a 6 pack of beer, or I went home and thought about suicide, and so we wanted
Yeah.
to be proactive at both of those places of let's check in and see how they really are doing. Let's maybe provide them some education on coping skills and
Yeah.
some data. And then if they choose to continue, that's up to them. But if they don't, that's okay too. But they've made a connection, and now
Yeah.
maybe when they are ready in the future, they're less scared. There's less of a stigma because they've kinda met you and had a conversation with you.
I think that's important because you're right. When they're injured, they're impacted in a lot of ways mentally. They're frustrated because they're injured. They want to be able to play. They want to be on the field. They want an answer to figure out why they're injured. In my son's
Right.
case, when he got hurt, he didn't know what was wrong. His arm was numb. He couldn't throw. It took months to figure out, and thankfully, it wasn't like a tear or anything. I'll be honest, I don't know if they ever really figured it out, but it was a scary time, right? So having resources available to you for mental health and having those conversations really does make a difference.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, and I think that's a great segue into kinda stigma reduction. One
Yes.
thing I try to really do is, 1, I try to dress like a trainer or a coach, um,
Mhm.
you know, as much as I can. I try to be visible in the training room before they need me, right? Just kinda talking people up, dabbing them up, you know,
Yeah.
talking about whatever, they're getting dry needled and we're making jokes
Yeah.
about it, and then I'm kinda trying to distract them, or I'm in the PT clinic, I'm at practice, I'm at games, the old cliche that they have to know you care before they care what you know, right? And so trying to get to know them on a personal level and for them to get to know me on a personal level. But the
Mhm.
biggest thing that I think has really helped with the stigma is the amount of college and professional athletes who are starting to come forward and share their story
I agree.
through platforms such as this, through Sports Illustrated or other publications, and the newspaper, on social media. I can tell you till the cows come home how helpful it's been. Of course, I can't use
Yeah.
names and tell you
Right.
who I've worked with and who I've helped. But when an athlete comes forward, a Michael Phelps or Kevin Love comes forward, I mean, DeMar DeRozan, that's a lot
Big.
different. And
Yeah.
Naomi Osaka,
Right.
you're like, "Wow, like, really?" Like,
I had
"You
yeah.
struggled with that, and, like, you're at the top
Yes.
of your game, and I can't believe that." And for them to share their stories, I think that is what's really helping.
I agree.
There's still a huge stigma, especially amongst men
Yes, very much so.
and especially minority men. And so the more male athletes that can come forward and share their stories so people realize they're not alone. And it's hard with something that's invisible. It's an invisible injury, right? Like
It
we
is.
can't do an X-ray. I mean, yeah, I guess we
No,
could do a functional MRI or something like that, but show you parts of the brain that are lit up or not lit up, but not real cost effective. And we can't, it's not like we can show you a broken bone and we can show you that it's healing. It's
you
not
can
like that
see
with
it.
mental health,
Yeah,
right? You can't
yeah,
really see it. But it's just as impactful, if not more.
yeah. Um, these the stigma, if you will, I think it does get better, right, wrong, or indifferent when these celebrities and athletes speak about it. Right? It's good that they do. It's unfortunate that we need them to, but in reality, the young folks look up to the athletes. They look up to the celebrities. They look up to the musicians to talk about it. So it's good to see more of that because we have to find ways to reach these young adults and these kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the organizations are starting to do the right thing. The NCAA is close to requiring a full-time in-house mental health clinician for every Division One athletic department. They're close. And
Okay.
many already have that. The larger schools have staffs of 3, 4, 5.
Hmm.
What's harder are at the mid majors. And then the NFL just came out and said you need to have a full-time mental health clinician in your facility. And then you're
Nice.
talking
Nice.
65 players. That doesn't seem like a lot, especially when you think about, I've worked at universities of 500 student athletes, and there
Right.
was me part-time trying to
Yeah.
handle.
Yeah.
So the
Right.
ratio, good for the NFL. It's a lot better. And, the
Yeah.
NBA has put in licensed clinicians, et cetera, in facilities as well. And so you're starting to see the organizations, the parent organization start to push this and implement this, uh, if for no other reason to cover their butts, CYA, right? If,
Yeah.
if that's
Yeah.
if we're being honest, I think that's part of it, right? Right? They don't want a lawsuit on their hands, but it's
Right.
also the right thing to do. I think people are
It
recognizing
is. Yeah.
it. So
It's absolutely the right thing to do, and I'm glad that we're doing it and seeing more of it. Hopefully, we'll continue to see that expand. I mean, just in the last week, I think there was 2 or 3 athletes that died from either an overdose or suicide. It's maybe in the last month, but it's unfortunate, and we hate to hear about these situations. It does start the conversation when it does happen, but the ones that are still out there that are dealing with it, them speaking up does really matter.
yeah, unfortunately, we get numb to it because it's happening
Yes.
so often. It's kind of like shootings in schools. Like you talk about it for a day and then you're kind of numb to it. Like Rondale Moore in the NFL committing suicide was a big deal. And I mean, I hope people are still having conversations in locker rooms and so forth. But I don't see a lot of like public conversation
Right.
continuing about that. Right. And like that was
Yeah.
a very high profile recent suicide of
Yes.
someone who seemingly had everything in life, and clearly they didn't, right?
And yeah. Well, and it's the next news cycle, unfortunately, right? Because that's how the news stations work. It's like, okay, boop, move on. And in reality, we need some type of continuous discussion because we don't want to have continuous examples of people dying from suicide
Right.
or addiction or overdose. We want
Yep.
continuous positive interactions and discussions. And of course, the news organizations are like, well, that's not newsworthy to them. They're not getting ratings. But at the same time, it's like, it's kind of necessary.
It is. Which is why I'm glad you have this platform and I mean, this is one of many ways to get that message out there.
Yeah, it's important, and I've come away from every conversation learning something, feeling energized about the topic. It doesn't feel heavy talking about it. I think that's the thing a lot of folks fear about it is, well, talking about it's going to make me heavy. It's going to make me worse. Honestly, no, it's not. It's going to make you feel better. It's going to make you feel energized. In most cases, it's going to make you want to talk to somebody else about it. And for me, it's been amazing. And I started this from a good place since well past my challenges, but I started this in a good place, and I'm better today than I was 5 months ago or 4 months ago when I started this conversation. Um, Now, you seeing any? Is it any different at the professional level? I mean, obviously the stress levels are maybe a little bit higher in some ways, albeit many of them are a little bit more. I hate to say they're more adults because some of them act like less mature,
Yeah.
but the money's bigger, the pressure to win is higher, I would imagine in many cases. But is there really any major difference from a mental health perspective?
Not in terms of presenting issues. I'll tell you what the biggest difference is. So I just talked about how the NFL is making, a requirement that each team has a clinician in house. Here's the challenge with that. And I experienced this firsthand when I was in the NFL. You're being paid by the team. So though I am bound by my code of ethics and confidentiality, there's always the fear that the therapist, the psychologist is going to be sharing information
Uh,
with the organization, right? And especially in the NFL where there's no guaranteed contracts, we could cut you tomorrow. And maybe I don't even say anything, but they see an athlete cut down, make a right down the hallway and head towards my office. And we might just be talking about their future career. They don't even know what we're
right,
talking about, right? Or
right,
or maybe we have a friend in common and they just said, hey, so and so
exactly.
said I, right? This happened to me where I had an athlete come to me in the NFL and he was trying to break up with his significant other. And she said, if you ever break up with me, I'm going to put a knife to my throat and I'm going to tell the cops that you did it. And
Yeah,
who are they going to believe? Little old me, who's tiny female, or you, big football player? So he comes to me and shares, and he's asking for help. And like, how do I get out of this situation? Right.
yeah,
And very, as you might imagine, a very tense conversation and so
I'm
forth.
sure.
And then he has to put it to the side and go out to practice. That's
Yes,
you, right? And
that
then
can't be easy.
me, as I talked about putting in FaceTime, I like to be at practice. So I'm at practice watching.
Yep,
And the
yep,
general manager comes up to me and he's just kind of talking to me and we're just kind of, talking about our families. But this
yeah,
player looks over and sees me talking to the general manager. What do you think
right,
goes through his head?
yeah,
Yeah. So that
right,
element is very, very different at the professional level. Can you even trust the clinician? So now a lot of agents are telling their players, don't go to the team clinician. I will find you
yeah.
somebody
Of course.
that I can trust. Right? Is that person even qualified? I don't know. Right.
Yeah,
And so,
right. Like
so
that's a
it's,
horrible idea too. Right.
yeah, right. And then the union gets involved, right? So for
Mm,
substance issues, the team clinician was not allowed to work with the athlete. It had to be somebody approved by the union outside of the building. And
yeah.
so those kind of politics are very different at the professional level. But what they're going through is no different. They are depressed.
Same.
They are stressed. They are struggling to sleep. They are anxious about performing. They have relationship difficulties. They have
Hmm.
boundary issues. They have people that have their hands out.
Yeah.
They're very visible in the community and they can't even go to dinner without someone coming
Yeah.
up to them and playing
Hey.
armchair
Yeah.
quarterback, right? So all of those things are
Right.
very, very similar, whether you're high school, college. I mean, I think the magnitude goes up, no doubt,
Yeah.
right? But
Right.
high school, college, professional, I mean, they're going through the same things, which is why when a high profile athlete shares their story, it is so impactful because any athlete can relate.
Hmm.
But there are some nuances that are very, very different at the professional.
So at the end of the day, they're just like you and I. Other than when we go out to dinner, we don't get people coming up and looking for pictures and
Right,
criticizing.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. People forget that. They are just a person. People are always like, "My god, what was that like to talk to blah, 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 blah?" I'm like, "They're just a person," you know?
exactly.
And so,
They're human being. Right.
just a human, and they like the same things we like, and so they're just a human.
Yeah, and they wanna talk like a normal conversation. They'd probably much rather that than us be talking about the game and, like, talking about things that we're just mutually interested in or just being kind. I mean, start there, but I oftentimes will not even approach them because I don't want them to feel like that's why I'm approaching them. From
That
my perspective, I'm sure they wanna be left alone.
Yeah, they wanna be left alone, and then, like, what are your motives? Right? That's always
Right,
gotta be in
there's
the
a lot
back
of
of their
that.
mind, right?
Yeah, what is his play here? What is he trying to get from me? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
"Oh, he wants me on his podcast." That's what it is,
Right?
right?
Yeah, exactly. Now, interestingly enough, interesting fact of the day, you work with high school athletes locally. You're on the board of the local Hudson City Schools Foundation, which is the same school district where I graduated from high school, Hudson High School. What are the high schools doing and how are they dealing with it, right? 'Cause there's a funding discussion here, right, at the school
There
level
is.
in high schools.
There is, and we're in the midst of potential property taxes being cut or removed in the state of
Mm,
Ohio, and that not only funds our public schools, but that also funds our safety forces and other things that I think are near and dear to people's heart, and so, yeah, it's a challenge, it's a challenge. We know coming out of COVID, the rates of mental health difficulties have skyrocketed, and they haven't
mhm.
gone down. Um,
No.
they've just continued to rise, and whether COVID just kinda made us more aware of those things, and maybe they were already there. Maybe it was the tipping point. I don't really know, but clearly the loss of social interaction was a part of that. But the fact that those challenges are continuing now, and kids tend to be pretty resilient, so that's kind of staggering to me. So yeah, we're looking at creative ways. I'm sitting on a committee right now where we're looking to bring in suicide prevention to the schools, and but
Mhm.
how do you go about doing that?
Right.
Unfortunately, a lot of what's out there has not proven to be effective. And so it's the challenge is A, funding, and then B, what does it look like?
Sure. Different for every kid, right? I mean,
It's different for every kid, and we know
there's no
school
treatment that matches every single
there
person.
isn't, and school counselors are already overworked. I just heard a statistic
Yeah.
today that public school kids, on average, get 8 minutes with their school counselor.
Wow.
8 minutes.
That's yeah, which there's you can't do anything in 8
No,
minutes.
forget mental health. Not even college advising in 8 minutes, right? And so
Right.
and I also heard in that same presentation that the, uh, the governing organization of school counselors, the recommendation is, get this, 250 students to 1 counselor. What?
Wow. Yeah, like how?
That's the
Like,
recommendation.
how does anybody manage that? Right.
Right. So I think we've gotta increase staff. We've gotta provide resources in multiple different ways. People consume information in different ways. Like, is it social media? Is it parenting forums? It's all of the above. Is it emotional support animals in the schools? Is it
Mhm.
so? I think the challenge becomes what is
Yeah,
it,
yeah. Right.
as well as how do we get the funding for this, and
Yes.
how do we get people to care about it. Unfortunately, we're a very reactive society, and we don't tend to find the resources until there's a tragedy, right?
I know,
Right? As
unfortunately,
soon as
right.
there's a tragedy, all of a sudden, we can prioritize and find the resources for something like this, but
Yes.
it's too late for that person.
Right. Right.
How do we make this a priority now and quite literally save lives?
Absolutely. Yes. And it's always after the fact. It doesn't matter what it is, it's almost always a reactionary thing instead of
It is, and how do you put a
proactive.
dollar amount on someone's life, right? I mean,
Right? You can't.
what is one life saved worth? I mean,
Yeah. Right. Oh,
so
it's such an important topic and one that we probably can't solve today. Now,
Unfortunately, probably not.
now let's shift just a bit to corporate and kind of tell me a little bit about some of the work you're doing on the corporate side, working with executives and maybe workshops. What kind of work are you doing there?
Yeah, so my corporate work really is split between executive coaching one-on-one and then leadership workshops, keynotes, those sorts of things. And so the one-on-one, I primarily work with the C-suite, some,
Hmm.
some VP level. It's a lot around leadership and performance, but if I'm being honest, a lot of it is having that confidant that they can confide in and bounce ideas off of and share what's really going on inside of them and the pressures
Hmm.
to perform. And I'm working with somebody, I worked with somebody last night that has to let go of an employee tomorrow. And it is weighing on them so much. And who do they have to go talk to about
Right.
stressors of having to let somebody go? And if
Hard to
you have
do.
any heart in your body, that's gonna affect you, right? And
Yes. Right.
we never learn in business classes how to terminate somebody, right?
No,
Um,
it's
and
not an
how to
easy
do that
thing.
with empathy and with heart and caring about that person,
Yeah.
and so it's quite lonely. So a lot of executive coaching around leadership. I don't work with any turnaround situations. Like if you're on a performance improvement plan, you either need to perform or get out. It's high performers who want to do better. Just like the athletes I work with, it's high performers that feel like there's another level they just haven't gotten to. Um, they want to refine their skill set. They want to leverage their strengths. A
Hmm.
big part of what I do is how do we leverage what you're really good at? Like, it's not fun to only work on weakness, right? Like, who wants
No, that's more depressing. Right.
it is more depressing. I don't want to go into the
Yeah.
gym and have to do legs every day. I hate legs, right? I want to do
Yeah.
chest, right? So
Yeah.
obviously it's got to be
Yeah.
a balance, but
Right.
how do we leverage our strengths and at the same time try to refine some blind spots or some rough spots? And so that's the work I do. It's around the parameters of leadership and performance, but I think we do get into I won't be their therapist,
Hmm.
but I do think we get into confiding in that confidential space. And sometimes I think, as you mentioned, talking about it is so beneficial and sometimes labeling it. Being able to put a label on
Yeah.
what they're experiencing
Sure.
can really take some of the power out of it. When it's spinning around in our head, it
I,
feels so
yeah.
powerful and so insurmountable. But when
Oh
we
yeah.
can talk about it and get it out, maybe even through a journal on paper, and then put a
Hmm.
label on it, I think it takes some of the power away from that depression or anxiety or imposter syndrome or whatever
Yes.
they're going through, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's and then the workshop side, it's I always tell people my workshops are meant to scratch the surface and get you thinking a little bit more. I'm not going to drastically change behavior in an hour, but is there one actionable thing you can take and dig a little deeper? If so, then I did my job. And so just talked about harnessing the stress response for more productivity with a company this week. I've talked about the concept of social loafing as group size grows up, effort goes down. And how do we prevent
Yes.
that, especially in a sales organization?
Yeah.
Things like that. So psychological phenomena applied to performance.
Sure. That makes sense. Now, we talk about motivation and mental health are tied together. How do you feel that they're tied together?
Well, I think as our mental health suffers, our motivation goes down. And I think a lot of us probably experienced that in COVID. I stayed up till 3, 4 in the morning. I got interested in bourbon and probably consumed too much of it.
Yeah.
Didn't really have any goals, didn't feel productive, felt kind of sluggish, wore sweats every day. I mean, I
Yeah.
think there's something to, you dress how you dress affects your mood, right? And I think
It
all of
does.
those things contributed. And then what ended up happening, like motivation So a lot of like the COVID support groups I did with athletes at the time was, hey, because we would have people that were sequestered and secluded that tested positive,
Oh, yeah.
and it's like, hey, the best thing you can do is at least accomplish one thing today. If it's
Yeah.
just making your bed, make your bed. If it's you've had a to-do list of, just something. Athletes do well in structure, and they are really good at setting goals, and then it's seeing your accomplishments build up over time, and I think we lose that when our
Yeah.
mental health, when we're depressed, when we're anxious, when we're overwhelmed,
No doubt.
and I think the motivation drops, right? And so, unfortunately, I think the solution sometimes is get something done, which will okay, it'll spur on a little motivation, which in turn will kinda make us feel a little bit better. We feel a little bit more productive. So, yeah, I think they go hand in hand. As motivation goes down, mental health suffers. As mental health suffers, motivation goes down. They certainly work in concert with one another.
Taking action increases motivation, improves mental health. I mean, it's
It's very
amazing.
simplistic, but
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's not that easy.
no.
Right.
No,
But
and there are other factors involved too. I
sure.
don't want all your
Yeah. Yeah.
listeners to feel like, "Oh, it's
Snap
that
a
simple,"
finger.
but
Yeah.
it's certainly a part of it,
Yeah.
no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. It's impactful. And you mentioned journaling. Writing down what you're grateful for really does help. I do that in the mornings. Brain dump sometimes at night. If you're not sleeping, get it out of your head. Write it down. I mean, I can't believe how many people I've talked to after I've suggested that to them, and they're like, "I slept so much better last night." Well, yeah, you got it out of your head.
Yeah, because what happens, we are busy all day long. We are
Mhm.
distracted, and in fact, that's another thing. Part of why the mental health rates are continuing to rise is our level of distractions. Like, kids can't
Yeah.
watch TV without also texting on their phone at the same time. They're not even watching television. They're kinda half, right?
Guilty.
And the
Guilty.
research is
Yes.
quite clear, the more distracted you are, the more anxious and depressed you are. And so,
Yes.
which is quite simply why interventions like meditation and mindfulness are so effective for mental health, is because what they're teaching you to do is just be present with whatever you're doing, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
so the distraction part is a real part of our life, and what happens
It
is we're
is.
so distracted during the day, the first time that we're present with our body and our mind is when we lay down in bed. Right? And so it's
Wow.
no
Yeah.
wonder that
All
all those
day.
thoughts
Right.
come, "Oof," they're there, we're just not aware of them during the
Yeah.
day because 'cause we're distracted.
Just
Now you're
piling up
super
all
aware.
day. Yeah.
Yep. And so you're
Yeah.
right, I think sometimes if you don't have someone, or maybe you don't wanna always unload on your partner, or you don't have someone to share with, a great thing to do is to get your thoughts out on paper, and, it doesn't have to be a journal per se or a diary per se. It could just be a bullet list of all these things that are on your, and guess what? You can come back to it tomorrow. It'll
It'll
be
be
there.
there.
It'll be
Yeah.
there, and you're not gonna forget now.
Yes.
So, it's there,
Yeah. Which I
and
would do. Yes.
right, yeah, so it's there. Shut the book, put it in a
Yep.
drawer if you need to have that
Yeah.
symbolic part, and then you can come
Yeah.
back to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
It does
great
help.
way for people who struggle with racing thoughts.
Oh, I used to be horrible with that back in the 2016, 17, 18, 19. It was awful. I mean, when I was at my worst too, but yeah, I mean, I couldn't sleep. Now, problem falling asleep. It's a big difference. Now, if an athlete that's listening, and whether they be high school, college, professional, if they're dealing with that pressure, anxiety, depression, maybe even suicidal thoughts, but they're afraid asking help means that they're weak, what would you tell them? What's the first step? Short of, obviously, if they're thinking about suicidal thoughts, 988 or 911.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if you're at that point, 100% reach out to hotlines, emergency room, all those things. It feels like a problem that is never going to subside, and I promise that it can and it will. Suicide's it's a permanent solution to an impermanent uh struggle that someone's going through, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
and so I'd say talk to somebody. If you don't want to go talk to Go talk to a coach, go talk to your trainer, go talk to a teammate, go talk to a parent, talk to a family friend. Um, I think you're going to find that you're not alone, and a lot of
No,
people
correct.
can empathize and relate to. Do they know exactly what you're going through? No. And that's why we should never say, "Oh, I know how you feel." You don't know how they feel. You can
Yeah,
imagine how they might feel, or you can relate to how they feel, but your experience might be very, very different. And if somebody does come to you, listen. This isn't the time for advice. This isn't problem solving mode. Listen, really connect and
yeah,
listen and be present. And then hopefully that person can help make the referral and destigmatize and say, you know what? I've had a ton of athletes who have gone and sought out help. And my advice to you also would be
yeah, yeah.
um, to to realize that you can't solve this on your own, and
Right,
to articulate what's going on is a sign of strength. Um,
right.
and it's not a sign of weakness. And just like if you had a broken leg or a torn ACL, you wouldn't try to fix it on your own, right?
Correct.
Um,
Yeah,
you might want to, but you're going to. Why is this any different? It should not be, right? There are professionals out there that can help you, and unfortunately, not every professional is the right fit for everybody. And so,
true.
if you haven't found the right person, go find somebody else. I think sometimes it takes 2, 3 attempts until you find the right therapist for you. You know, there are different people for different, just like we talked about different coaching styles, there's different therapy styles, and not everybody's the right fit for everybody. That doesn't mean you can't get better. That just means you haven't found the right fit yet.
Yeah, exactly. Last question would be, a lot of athletes think they have to choose either their perform at their highest level or take care of their mental health. But I think that we talked about this as false choice because performance and well-being work together.
Absolutely. Think about it like legs on a stool.
Hmm.
One leg is family, one leg could be sports, one leg could be, if you're a spiritual person, your spirituality, another leg could be your friends or your career, right? If any one of those legs is out of balance,
Hmm.
the whole stool is going to wobble, right? And so,
Right.
like, if your personal life is not in order, your athletic life is going to suffer. And if your athletic life is out of order, your personal life is going to suffer. Like, you cannot
Yes.
separate them, which is, I don't want to get on my soapbox, but there are people in the field of sports psychology who just do the performance, right? And then
Hmm.
there are some people that just do the clinical, right? I don't know how you separate the two, and because I think they one impacts the other. And
Hmm.
where do you draw the line? I mean, what's going on in my personal life is going to play out on the field, right? And what
Yes.
goes on the field is going to play out in my personal life, right?
Absolutely.
We can't expect athletes to just flip the switch and, you know, be this tough, mean, physical person on the field and then be this kind-hearted teddy bear off the, like,
Right.
how do we do that, right? And so
You're right.
It
Exactly.
it they go hand in hand, and so, no, I would argue that in order to be a successful athlete, your mental health has to be healthy, and your athletic health needs to be healthy.
Yeah, I agree. Sam, thank you. This conversation is going to help athletes at every level understanding about that they don't have to tough it out anymore. They're not alone. There's a lot of folks that have been down this path and there is help available. How do people connect with you and reach you if they're interested in learning more?
My website is www.c4pp.org, so that stands for Center for Peak Performance. You can also go to centerforpeakperformance.com. It's just a lot longer. I am on all the well, I shouldn't say all the socials. I'm on Instagram at Center for Peak Performance with the number 4. Same on Facebook. And then X would be at Sam underscore Maniar, Maniar. And then you can also contact me through the web contact form on my website.
Awesome. I'll make sure that's in the show notes as well. I appreciate you having this conversation with me. It's impactful, it's meaningful, and it's necessary. We need to have these conversations. So I appreciate you joining me on this today.
Yeah, thanks for doing it. Thanks for doing it. It's a great service for those out there, and absolutely, people need to hear it.
You're welcome. And if you're an athlete out there, your mental health matters just as much as your physical health. The tough it out culture is literally killing people. Asking for help is not a weakness. It's what champions do. There's a lot going on with NIL, social media abuse, coaching pressure. These are real stressors, and you don't have to handle them alone. So make sure you talk to someone, reach out, ask for help. And just remember that performance and well-being are not opposites. You don't have to choose one or the other. It's important there is synergy there. Focus on both. And if you are struggling today, make sure you talk to someone. Call 988. And if it's an emergency, call 911. You're important. You matter, and you are needed in this world. If this episode did help you, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. There are other folks out there that can benefit from it as well. My name is Mike Orlowski. This is Mojo Motivation and Mental Health. Choose happiness, choose to be extraordinary, and get your mojo back. Thank you.